All right.
Dunc and Holder, back at you after about a week away from the show here on a November 28th on a Tuesday. Jeff, good to be back here with you, even though I've been with you for the last 4 days. I see you every day, but hey, it's we just getting back from Los Angeles, and of course the Saints go down in LA, 26-20. We'll touch a good bit about that since we haven't really given our long thoughts on that. We both jumped on the show yesterday with Jim Derry and Amos Morale, but I know the loss felt deflating, and yet all isn't lost. It's not like we figured the Saints would win what 14 in a row.
Right.
We assumed they would lose somewhere down the line. Jeff basically put the gun to my head and made me pick a week ago what was going to happen with the game. If I would have known Marshawn
Oh,
Lattimore
here we go.
and Ken Crawley would both be
Here
out,
we go.
I probably would not have picked the Saints to win. That's why I was hemming and hawing. I mean, the injuries matter. They mattered in that game, obviously.
Yeah, didn't you think that was kind of the key to the game was the Saints couldn't really stop them. I know the offense didn't put up as many points as normal as you would expect, but I think once they got down, because the defense couldn't stop the Rams right off the bat. I mean, they were down 10-0, and the Rams got control of the game. We hear Sean Payton talk about that all the time, and I believe that, and I think fans need to recognize that. Games change because of circumstances. Once a team gets control of a game with a 10-point lead, you start kind of coaching a little differently. You don't completely abandon your game plan, but you do face the fact you're down 10-0. You have to start thinking about that. And the Rams, on the other hand, don't have to start abandoning their game plan. They're in control of their game plan. And I think that's what happened in that game. And the Saints are really good of doing that to other opponents. They're good at getting control of a game and then being able to run and pass and keep the defense on their heels. And I think that the Saints just felt like, to me, they were in catch-up mode from the very opening kickoff and never really felt in control.
Absolutely. And you look at what happened within that game, and Jared Goff had plenty enough time. Like Sean Payton harped on that after the game, even though on the stat sheet it looked like they had plenty to write home about as far as they had 4 sacks, but one of them was Jared Goff like running out of bounds.
Yeah,
It was
good point.
it was a sack for no yards. I think Craig Robertson was the closest, or Von Bell. So basically, he got the sack. But you look at the secondary, and of course, that was going to be the big problem. And predictably, it was the big problem. And I know people like throughout the game, and certainly throughout the post-game social media sphere screaming about Devontae Harris. Why on planet Earth did they do that, and why didn't they start Sterling more? That's a fair question. I don't think going forward we're going to have to deal with that anymore. As far as I think Sean Payton, if both Crawley and Lattimore are out, I think Sterling Moore will play. And look, Kenny Vaccaro probably didn't have his best game. I don't know how healthy he is. Honestly, I'm not making excuses for the guy, but I have no idea the severity of the injury. And I'm not gonna say, look, maybe he made some misreads like he did maybe early on in the season, but I have no idea if he was completely healthy or not. I honestly just don't.
I think he's being asked to play a very difficult position, having to defend against wide receivers. I mean, he's a safety. He's not the greatest cover man to begin with, and now you're asking him to cover wide receivers. And I thought one of the keys of the game, we didn't really talk about this much, but I went back and watched the replay last night on NFL.com, and I think the Rams had a very good game plan. Jared Goff kind of pulled a Drew Brees. He got to the line of scrimmage, and numerous times he would get under center and force the Saints defense to dictate their alignment. And then he'd back out and change the play call and get them into a positive play call and almost get the Saints to show their hand. They must have seen something on film that said they need to control what's going to happen at the line of scrimmage, and only so many quarterbacks can do that. And obviously, Sean McVay has empowered Jared Goff in his second year to be able to do that because they consistently did that throughout the game. And I think it'll be interesting now that the Saints are kind of going into this gauntlet where they're playing experienced quarterbacks like Cam Newton and Matt Ryan down the stretch. I'm wondering if more teams are going to do that going forward because it seemed to work. I mean, the Saints defense did not seem, they caught them a few times with some blitzes, but I felt like the Rams offense was kind of one step ahead.
Yeah, it seemed to work, and yet you can show your hand and be okay if you feel better about what you got on the back end.
Sure.
I mean, that also, don't discount that they didn't have Alex Okafor. Look, you saw sometimes Sheldon Rankins was in the base defense as the defensive end, and that's not optimal. That's not what you want to see. I know he played a little bit of it in college. I remember going back and watching video from Louisville when he was coming out because we knew the Saints were going to target him, and he played a little bit of that, but you do not want that from Sheldon Rankins. I'm sure Sheldon Rankins probably doesn't want that for himself either because he knows that's probably not his strength there.
I think you were doing that just on the rundowns,
right.
Letting him play outside because he's obviously going to be stout against the run. But what I was getting at more of what Goff was doing, then he would move his receivers around and he'd get Kenny Vaccaro isolated one-on-one against the receiver, and then they'd go right at it. So that's very advanced stuff for a young quarterback, and it shows you the level that the Rams offense is operating at. There's a reason why they're ranked second in the league or whatever in scoring, and I think that also exposed something that you and I have talked about on the program, and that is they haven't faced a lot of really top quarterbacks in that run, and when they did, and you got to remember the Rams were without Robert Woods, their best receiver, their number one receiver, so they weren't even as high-powered as they normally would be. But when the Saints are facing a top offense like that, like a Tom Brady and the Patriots, they get exposed because, well, especially when they don't have Marshawn Lattimore and King Crawley.
And we're harping a lot on the defense, but let's be frank, and I wrote about it after the game, the offense, they didn't come ready to play, honestly, outside of Alvin Kamara making a couple of dazzling moves, leaping a guy, and then the touchdown run. The offense was stagnant. And I think the pressure put on Drew Brees early, I think that rattled him. I don't know if he'll admit it, but I think that rattled him on some throws later where he's one-hopping Ted Ginn across the middle and badly misfiring on a deep ball where Ted Ginn, it looked like the ball was nowhere near where it was supposed to be, or maybe that was on Ginn. I don't know. The moral of the story is I think he got rattled, and that was before the injury of Teron Armstead, because I think Teron was having some troubles. I think everybody, Anders Pete at times, I think everyone across that offensive line was having trouble because, look, that's an active defensive front, and we've seen in the past how well Wade Phillips can coach against
Agreed, yeah.
a high-octane offense, and I think they did a tremendous job. And all the way around was going to be a tough ask for them to get the win, but you can't discount, and the point of my column was after the game, that when the Saints have played stout teams, and Patriots didn't necessarily have a stout defense, but their defense is actually playing a little bit better now. But say Minnesota, say Los Angeles, they played those teams, their offense got shut down. And those 2 days, remember, the defense wasn't up to snuff. Obviously, they were still trying to learn some things in Minnesota, but they were down some defensive players, and the offense was not capable of kind of carrying that weight, as opposed to when you play Washington, the offense was able to kind of bring you back because you were playing kind of a middle-of-the-pack defense, not the top-tier teams.
I think one of the reasons Sean Payton was so, he was usually after a loss in the post-game press conference, he's actually more upbeat. He kind of does the counterintuitive thinking approach to games. When they win, he's Mr. Debbie Downer. Here's all the things we did wrong. He's trying to keep his team level and on an even track. And so his philosophy is after a loss, he's going to be a little more upbeat. But he wasn't after this one. And one of the reasons I think, and I'm just surmising here, but I think they kind of got out-coached. I think on both sides of the ball, the Rams had better game plans. And I think he realized. I think he let the team down a little bit, and he knows it. So, look, it might end up being the best thing that ever happened to him. They weren't going to win 14 games in a row. And so you lose that game, even though it's a critical game, I think, in the potential playoff seeding picture, it might get them focused and back for this big run here against the division opponents.
I totally agree that when Sean spoke with us after the game that he felt like the third down game plan wasn't good. He even said that. And
Yes.
so you knew that. I asked about going for the field goal instead of going for the touchdown when Michael Thomas got stuffed on third and goal. He said the percentages. Look, I get that because think about it. If you kick the field goal and you've only got to get a touchdown and a field goal to get within the game, it's easier to do that than if you fail, you got to get 2 touchdowns. So, and with 10 minutes to go, you got time. I know I said when I was a guest on the show yesterday that it was seeming like a lack of aggression. It might have been, maybe in Sean's eyes, that he didn't feel right about it. He didn't feel good about against that team on that day that they wanted to go for the touchdown because you never know. The defense wasn't stopping the Rams much. What if they go down and score and it's really over?
Yeah, I think if they played them again, it'd be a totally different outcome. I think the Saints could easily beat the Rams, but it was just one of those days where you just never felt like the Saints had it in any phase. And even though I know it was only a 6-point margin at the end, I think that's very misleading. I mean, the Rams went to prevent defense and kind of let the Saints in. I was telling somebody yesterday, I don't understand why teams do that against the Saints because once they do it, Drew Brees lights up a prevent defense. We've seen it now 2 weeks in a row. The Redskins went to it. He just drives down the field and he gets in a rhythm. The defense, and I don't know what the Rams obviously were playing the percentages there, and it worked for them. But I would not be that confident. I would continue the way you play the Saints. Is you play them tough man to man. You force Brees to make those long downfield kind of almost Hail Marys to Michael Thomas, and every once in a while he's going to hit them, but more often than not they're not, and they're going to get behind schedule. You don't play him zone. He carves up a zone.
Absolutely. So just to lay out the show, look, we're treating this kind of like a Monday show. We got no guests and keeping it wide open just because we haven't talked in a week and we need to play catch up, honestly, of what's going on. Look, the Pelicans, they'll play Minnesota Timberwolves tomorrow night, and they're coming off of a solid week as far as getting some solid wins and losing games you figure they'd lose. So, we'll touch on that. Look, Anthony Davis named Western Conference Player of the Week, obviously had a good week. So, look, I think the Pelicans are basically holding serve, and that's fine and until they really kind of get this thing going. So, not bad shape. And look, hell, Memphis' coach just got fired.
Well, I was going to say
that was crazy.
That's what I would say is critical as sometimes we've been of the Pelicans. The Western Conference is in kind of disarray. We thought it was going to be this juggernaut, and it is at the very top, the top 4 teams or so, top 4 or 5. But after that, there are way more teams that have way more bigger pressing problems than the Pelicans. The Clippers are in free fall. The Grizzlies are in free fall. And so I think the Pelicans now can feel good about making the playoffs. I think unless something really bad happens, there's a spree of injuries, they're going to be in good shape to get into the playoffs. But can they crack that top 5? I don't know. I think that's the ceiling for them. There's like a top 5 ceiling, and then everybody else is juggling 6, 7, and 8 seeds.
Right now, the Pelicans 11-9. They're 2 games up on Utah. They're in the 7th spot, but they're only a game out of 5th. So look, I think the Pelicans are around where we expected. We'll see where we go from there, but we'll touch on that later on in the show. And of course, look, open phone lines throughout the show. 504-260-1280 is the number to get involved. So why don't we take a break right here on the show, and when we get back, we'll dive a little bit more on the Saints, just kind of what we saw, who played well, what's going to happen later on down the line, because Jeff's column after the game was basically saying you're coming up to a 2-game stretch that will define your season. If you go 2-0, you're in great shape. If you go 1-1, you can manage. You go 0-2, you're teetering on the edge. And so this is going to be a critical stretch. NFC South opponents, Carolina coming to town, then a short week at Atlanta. So come on back here, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder.
I'm hot.
I know, dude. It warmed up quick outside. It was cold, and it warmed up.
I know.
Quick. You could turn down the thermostat here if you want.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Fucking 72 and a half. What the crap is that? Oh, it only goes down to 70. That's great.
Oh.
Kind of cheap little place we work in.
type them down. All right. Yep. All right, got it. Yeah, it's funny. You look at Breeze's numbers, and it's like, oh, he had a 101.8 rating. I'm like, dude, that's because he carved him up on the last drive.
Right.
Because the
Exactly.
rest of the game,
All of his
he almost
yards.
got picked 4 times. Like,
Yeah.
dude.
Look how lucky they were. 2 picks easily. One right in the guy's
Well,
hand.
I think with 2 like right in their hands.
But then he got hit for a fumble that went right to the one Saints guy that was there.
Yeah.
So like,
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Yeah. It's kind of why I like left it open. I was like, I know people won't want to call and like,
right. That's just smart.
yeah. Since we hadn't been on and to talk about it, might as well. What the heck? I figured, man. Come on, we got some loyalists.
Did you see the Tom Savage post-game press conference?
No.
Walked in the interview room. It's almost empty. No one asked a question. Savage said, "We good?" and left. That was a post-game press conference. Because it was probably on deadline, you know.
Yeah. I don't blame him. I'm not gonna like Eli
nobody
Manning
there.
that one time. Remember, there's like no one in there, and Eli's just like standing there. Yeah, I'm sure everyone at the Chronicle is like, they're like the only ones probably up there.
Right.
I guess the ESPN reporter should have been in there. She's not totally on deadline.
It's true.
Oh well. Yeah. But yeah, I was doing like I told you I was doing kind of the research on every Saints player that's ever had double-digit sacks in a season, and just like how many they had through 11 games. I mean, jeez, Pat Swilling was a monster.
Oh no, he really was.
Yeah.
You just start looking at his numbers.
Yeah.
And Ricky Jackson was just good every year.
I think Dave has toned down Torture Tuesday for Jeff's sanity, so it's not total like we're jamming at the dungeon with Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails or Phil Anselmo. Oh, all right, I like it.
Well, yeah, I need to go in the break and get my bat, my live bat, so I can bite his head off.
Snort a line of ants like Ozzy.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Saints
on the
fans,
show.
don't snort any lines of ants. It's going to be okay. I mean, the Saints are 8-3. But look, we got 4 callers on the line, so everyone hang on. 504-260-1280. We will get to you here, starting right now with Brother in Metairie. Brother, thanks for calling Duncan Holder. What's up, brother? All right, brother, appreciate it. Yeah, look, the injuries are certainly starting to pile up. We know about Lattimore as far as missing the game. We know about Crawley. Now, do I know their status going into this week? No, I don't. Look, well, obviously, I think the learned Saints fans understand that you get the injury report on Wednesday unless something leaks out or, that's typically where it is. But look, yeah, Armstead left with a hamstring injury. I'm curious to see about that. Look, Kobe Fleener got a concussion, so we got to see about that. Marcus Williams left late in the game. He went to the locker room when the Saints were on that final offensive drive, so he left with an injury. Do I know how serious it is? No, I don't, but that's something we're going to have to monitor too. So if you lose Marcus Williams as well, boy, I think it's going to be some tough sled.
I didn't see Marcus Williams in the locker room afterward either, which indicates he was probably getting some kind of treatment. Yeah, there's a little red flag there. And, it makes you wonder a little bit if Kobe Fleener did have a concussion, did he come out of the game? I don't remember if he came out or not, but, this concussion protocol comes into question then because we know he took that hit. I think it was a personal foul, right?
Yes.
It was clearly a personal foul. But, yeah, these injuries are adding up, and I think it's just the job now of an NFL head coach and a coaching staff, how they manage these injuries. And at some point, you just run out of answers.
Right.
When you're losing so many good players. I mean, the Saints don't have anybody as talented as Marshawn Lattimore. That's just the way it is. But do they have enough competent defensive backs to put on the field to where they're not just, blowing assignments and leaving guys wide open? That's the difference.
And basically, Sean Payton said that, no, Davante Harris blew too many assignments and he got yanked, and rightfully so. I think it was completely obvious as far as that. And if he's got to play, you're in trouble.
I think Saints fans have it right on Davante Harris. It's not that he's getting beat. It's that he's blowing assignments. At this stage, you can't have that. I mean, if he's in coverage and gets beat by Sammy Watkins, I think people can understand that. But having guys wide open, it's unacceptable.
Looking clueless is the way to get benched, and
Yep.
that's what we saw. Look, even when they pulled Kenny Vaccaro earlier in the season, it was because he was way out of position. Not like he was just beat by a step. He was beat by 15 yards. You can't have that.
Yeah, and he admitted it. He came clean yesterday and admitted and was accountable that he had a bad game, and he really did. I mean, but again, I think that was the Rams getting him isolated on receivers, and I think the Saints have to reevaluate that, and they might. Now that they got a little more depth at corner and they got these guys now have 2 weeks under their belt in the system. Sterling Moore knows the system. That's why he could jump right in. Dexter McGoogle, I think it is, and I think they add another corner to the practice squad. They might need more time.
Yep. Let's hit the phone lines. 504-260-1280 is the number to get involved. DJ, NOLA East. DJ, thanks for calling Dunc and NOLA. What's up, buddy?
I know the Ram defense can do that, to people, but it just looked like that they were just missing tackles on a lot of running plays, and because of that, it just made it seem a lot worse than it turned out to be. But, I think the Saints have a good shot this weekend, and I think they'll, revert back to the team that we saw, the last 8 weeks. And I'll hang up and listen to your comments.
All right, hey DJ, appreciate the phone call as always and the good analysis. Look, I think that's very true, and I think Sean Payton, you combine the third down plan and you combine the fact that he felt that practice was just so. He probably felt going in, man, we might be in for it today, just by seeing what he's seen all week and just as then how the game started, he said, "Yep, we might get got today." Essentially,
and the Rams are coming off a big loss against the Vikings, so they had an edge to them. And a lot of their players afterwards said, "We weren't going to let that Vikings loss carry over to this week." And I think the Saints will be in the exact same mode this week. They're not going to let the Rams beat them twice, if you will. That hangover is not going to carry over to them in a big divisional game this week. I think the Saints are going to play much better on Sunday in the Dome. I'm sure the Dome will be a spectacular environment, but are they going to be good enough with all these injuries that have been mounting?
And you look at the way that the Saints kind of match up with Carolina. I'm sure they feel good about the way they played last time. I know Greg Olsen could be back, but it sounds like he hurt his foot again, which that's not a great sign. And so I'm curious to see how this plays out. Maybe the Saints, maybe they get a little bit healthier.
It seems like Drew Brees really plays well against the Panthers because they play a lot of zone. They don't give up anything over the top. They make you kind of work your way down the field, but Brees is great at that. He's great at staying patient, working his way down the field, and finding those holes in the zone. They've always had success against the Panthers for the most part. Now, they might get beat 35-33 in years past, but offensively, they've never been really shut down the way that the Panthers can shut teams down. And I think this is a good matchup for them. But the Panthers are scoring more points now that they've kind of got their offense figured out. but losing Olsen would be a huge blow to them because he's one of his favorite targets.
So Cam Newton didn't play well, and somehow they got all these special teams and defensive touchdowns. That's what really kind of helped them because, look, the Jets were hanging with them. So let's go to phone lines again, 504-260-1280. Mike and Slidell. Mike, thanks for calling Dunc and Holder. What's up, Mike?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
Good.
I want to touch on a couple of things. First off, you said that the Rams played man defense and the Panthers play zone. What if the Panthers switched to to man? Because, I think Drew was kind of forcing the ball, but no one was really getting open. They weren't getting separation.
Right. You're right.
And another thing is the corners. Last year we lost a bunch of corners. This year the same thing. And the injury to Bro, if he would have come back, it would have been a different outcome, I think, for the Rams game, that we wouldn't have had to start Harris. And why, later on in the playoffs or whatnot, and all the corners are healthy, why not put Vaccaro back at safety and have P.J. Williams play the slot? That's how they started the season. Why not go back to that? Why are they not trusting P.J. Williams in the slot? And the injuries are starting to mount up, but, just one position in general, every year, the cornerback position. I'll hang up and see what you guys have to say about that.
Now, hey, Mike, appreciate the phone call. It's a good question. I'm curious to see what they do because they might have to do that if Marcus Williams is hurt. They might have to do that. We don't know the scope of the injury. No idea. We just know he left early near the end of the game, went to the locker room. So I'm curious to see if he pops up on the injury report. But because at some point we were seeing Raphael Bush out in coverage. You do not want to see that. No, that's out of desperation. So you do not want to see that. But if you had to play more traditional two-safety look, and if you get your corners back, it wouldn't stun me at all to see PJ out there. Because, look, Von Bell, he's not optimal in coverage, but he had a very good game, in my opinion. I think he's played well the last couple of games, and so you like what you're doing with him. But if you probably feel much better if Crawley's there, if Lattimore's there, and you feel like you can use Vaccaro there, and you can shift Marcus Williams over and Von Bell, and you can kind of do what you've been doing.
Well, I think losing Marcus Williams has a similar domino effect that Marshawn Lattimore had, and that is Williams is your best center fielder. He does a lot of things that people probably don't see during the course of a particular play because he's the center fielder shading the deep coverage, and he's got great range. And if you take him out of the lineup, now you've got Von Bell or Kenny Vaccaro playing that spot, and neither one of them is adept in coverage as Marcus Williams. So that could be a key blow. And, you asked earlier about if the Panthers, everybody in the NFL kind of mixes their coverages. It's not just one thing. Seattle's probably one of the few teams that just plays their straight man, but they're going to mix it up. But they have drafted and procured players to play zone defense. That's what they play. So they're going to try and stick to their game plan because their players are suited to play zone more than man-to-man.
Let's take one more phone call, and then we'll take a break right here on the show. Let's go up to Virginia. Matt in Virginia. Matt, thanks for hanging on. Thanks for calling Dunc and Holder. What's up, Matt?
Hey, thanks a lot. 2 quick points and I'll get off. First, the head coach's job is to have his team optimally ready to play at kickoff. And Sean Payton has fallen down on that on a number of occasions. And Sunday was emblematic of that. They came out flat. And B, there was talk when we were all doing really well that we were comparing the 2009 team to this one. And I think the significant difference has been pointed out. It's in week 6 of the 2009 team, the 5-0 Giants played the 5-0 Saints. The Saints killed them. Then in week 12, they played the Patriots and blew them out of the dome. When they played the top-tier teams that year, they beat them. And this year, they haven't. And I'll get off the line.
Matt, that's a great point, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. You could see the Saints. Look, the Saints are a playoff caliber team. I don't think there's any question about that. But you're seeing who the haves are at this point. As you could see, all right, the Eagles aren't going anywhere, and the Vikings have kind of taken a little step above. And now I would still say the Rams, look, they've got some tough games still left in the schedule. Maybe they can fall down a tick, but I think you can kind of see a clear 1, 2. I think it's clear 1, a clear 2, and then 3, 4 could be up in the air, unless the Saints can kind of right the ship. And, fully healthy, I think they can compete with those teams, no doubt. Banged up at corner, you're not going to compete.
And look,
well, you're not going to win. You're going to compete. You're probably not going to win.
I think the NFC is a lot better this year than it was in 2009. I think the competition's better. There are more good teams, and it's all going to shake out here in the next couple weeks. Look, Philadelphia goes to Seattle this week. We all know how difficult that place is to play. They're going to stay on the West Coast, and then they play at the Rams. So we're going to see, and then Minnesota goes to Atlanta this week, and then Atlanta will play the Saints. Carolina's playing the Saints. It's all going to start shaking out the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a break right here on the show. If you want to get involved, 504-260-1280 is the number to get involved.
Cordell, Minnesota.
And when we get back here on the show, we will go up to Minnesota. Our good buddy Cordell driving the roads. Hopefully they're not iced over yet. We'll talk with Cordell coming back here next. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. We're Duncan Holder.
Metallica.
There you go. Just warming us up. By the end, it'll be Rob Zombie.
I'm obviously a little rusty.
Your forecast on Sports 1280. New Orleans.
They're like, we can't hear the callers. I'm like, what's going on?
Stop tipping my hand.
Oxygen temple scanner thermometer.
Happy Tuesday from the Fox 8 Weather Center. I'm
It'll be
meteorologist
Guar
Shelby
later, and Jeff
Latino.
will be wearing costumes.
70s today with more sunshine.
And then the lesser-known Gwar Volbeat crossover song.
Falling into the
There's a
50s on
Guar
both sides.
Volbeat crossover.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Few
Volbeat.
patches. From the Fox 8 Weather
They
Center,
at
I'm
least sound,
meteorologist Shelby
they like
Latino.
jam, but they
Have
at
a
least
great
don't
day.
sound like
Find
they're
the
going to
thermometer.
like
Trust over 70 published studies
chop
supporting
like
the accuracy
animals
of the
up.
Exogen
Satanic
temporal
ritual.
scanner.
Yeah,
Your
they're
family
just, like,
deserves the
jammed
best.
up.
The Exogen temporal scanner thermometer.
That's why Morton says, they have their melodic beats.
Right. Melodic.
If you need a
When he said melodic, I was like, are you talking about mullets? No, like melody, melodic.
Lend.com, the better payday loan.
We need to get him back
Subject
on
to
sometime.
availability in your state.
He was
Signed up
awesome.
as a licensed credit services organization, not
We'll
a
have to
direct
figure
lender
out
in
a reason to
Ohio
get him
and
on.
Texas.
I know
It's
you
the
guys.
season
I mean, there's no really thing to get him on right now.
Fires to roast chestnuts.
Maybe if,
They're
like,
not
Will
gathered
Lutz
around
keeps kicking
TV
ass or something.
Even the warm glow of
Dude,
nature.
he is like...
'Tis the season
I know,
for
he's good.
Americans to gather
good.
around their
Numbers are
radios.
really good.
It's true. Radio
he
ads
was
like
like,
this
no
one
problem,
connect with
50-something
93% of Americans every week. That's more than
Yeah, the
TV,
Rams have
more than
good
Google,
kicking game.
even more than
Great
Facebook.
punter. That kicker
So
was
if you want
good.
to reach a nice big gathering of
Zerline.
boomers, Gen Xers
Yep.
and millennials.
Yeah, that
this
could
summer,
make them pretty good
to
in the playoffs.
iHeartMedia.com and put radio at the top of your wish list.
I didn't think that place. Sam was right. It's not loud.
Cosmetics chain
I mean, there's really not a huge crowd factor. I didn't think.
Well, Saints fans, there were a ton of them.
I know.
LA
I
location.
mean, it wasn't even full. The game wasn't
Like, people would say, like, you could tell, like, when Kamara scored a touchdown, it got loud.
Right.
Yeah, well, loud-ish.
Yeah,
As
I
loud as
agree.
you can get out there.
It kind of just goes out though because there's no
telling
such a
NBC's
bowl.
Today Show to try out makeup on the top of your hand rather than on your
And
lips
it's not
or
exactly
eyes.
sold out,
Sephora
so.
told Today
Right.
the health and safety of our clients
realize
is our
Cooper Kupp's had
foremost
such a monster
priority.
game.
Can our
Yeah,
Because
he
it
had a
kept getting
monster.
open
projects help
deep. 'cause-
veterans cope with
Yeah, I haven't. I
disorder?
had him on the
Elisa
fantasy
C.
team.
has some
It just got 100 yards. which is
Non-traditional
good.
therapies are now being
it's
used to
PPR.
help veterans cope with PTSD.
All right, 1 minute.
An organization called Help Heal Veterans provides free therapeutic craft kits to hospitalized and homebound vets. They say these kits, at least temporarily, relieve symptoms of depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other conditions.
Health update. Sarah Lee Kessler, NBC News Radio.
Yeah, watch this thing. I just saw this while we were talking.
Okay, children,
Validates
done
what I
with the
was saying.
alphabet. Next subject,
Send it to you.
financial well-being. How to manage your money. Turn to page 5 of your textbook.
When it comes to money, you can never start learning too early. That's why starting today, State Farm wants to give you the tools and support you need to take control of your finances.
Tonight, read the chapters on credit cards and balance
Says,
transfers. Pop quiz tomorrow.
Find out more at letstarttoday.com. State Farm, here to help
You can
life
see.
go right.
Showed him against the Saints.
Learn what our insiders know about your home teams. Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Still taking your phone calls. We'll throughout the rest of the show if you want to get involved. 504-260-1280 is the number. Guest free today. Feels like we haven't spoken in...
Oh, we lost Cordell.
Literally in a week. Well, if Cordell, Minnesota comes back, we'll get him on the line. But look, you were showing me something, Jeff, during the break about how Sean McVay and just the way he's able to coach. And when we had Sam Farmer on last week, the way they do it offensively is Jared Goff is throwing to a lot of open guys, and I don't know if it's necessarily every week every team's having meltdowns like I think we saw against the Saints, or just they're doing a great job of getting guys open with kind of play design and maybe rub routes and stuff like that. But the fact is that Jared Goff, you could see he got more confident as the season's gone on, and when there's some tough throws, he makes them and he can connect now.
Well, I think it's testament to getting into a quarterback-friendly offense with a quarterback-friendly coach in Sean McVay, and how that can transform a player's production and in turn their reputation and image. So it was easy to write off Jared Goff last year because he was in a non-quarterback-friendly system that didn't know how to utilize his skill set. He gets in a system like this with Sean McVay, and what McVay was doing, they had him mic'd up, and so they could hear him on the broadcast, the NFL Films broadcast,
Cordell's back,
of him calling the audibles to Jared Goff at the line of scrimmage. So he was basically telling him what to audible to, and then he would audible to him. They said on the play he got him in alignment, and Todd Gurley was wide open for a big play. So
he got up there quick enough before the 15-second cutoff and made the wow. That's impressive.
Right. So it was a strategy, and it's something I don't know if they do that every week, but we know how the Saints like to disguise and do all these things. And I noticed a few times Goff would actually get up under center and look like he was going to snap it, and the Saints would hurry up and get it lined up, and then he would back out. And I think it was a ploy to see if the Saints would show their cards.
Very interesting. Another way they were outcoached. I think that is apparent, and I think the Saints themselves understand that they got outcoached during the week as far as practices, and then on game day I think they got outcoached. Let's go to the phone lines. Cordell in Minnesota's back, driving around. Hopefully he is not frozen right now. Cordell, what's up, my friend? How are you?
Hey, not too much, guys. Hey, first of all, it's a balmy 50 degrees up here. Yesterday we saw 60 degrees, so no, not frozen over up here. So it's beautiful, and I'll be home this weekend, so I'll be down there enjoying some of that 80-degree weather this week. So I hope to see y'all in the dome. I got a couple points I want to make real quick, and then I got a couple questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the first point is, I know the games that we played against those quality opponents, and we lost against the Vikings, the Patriots, and the Rams. We went in those games without our best players on the field. So we didn't have Ken Crawley. We had Devontae Harris in those first two games, and they took advantage of him in those first two games. I know a lot of times when we talk about those games, we don't remember that Ken Crawley wasn't even activated in those two games.
You're right.
Those first two games.
You're right.
So and then another point I want to make is, and this is just my opinion, I think, one, Sean Payton every year he'll lose you at least one game by being undercoached, about being outcoached, and then he'll win. He'll probably outcoach his opponent probably 2 games. He'll win you 2 games. But every year, it seems like he'll lose 1 game. Now, my question is, I have a couple of questions. The first one is, do you think the Saints, when at the end of the season, do you think we should draft another wide receiver or a tight end? Because it seems like Drew is missing he's missing that safety net that he used to have with
talking Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks.
No, not Cooks, but the possessor.
Willie Snead has gone missing.
Snead, exactly.
Yes.
It seems like he lost his mojo. I don't know what's going on with him. The second question is, what's going on with Arthur Marlette? Is he still on the team, or is he not developing? Why aren't we not giving him a shot? And I'll just hang up and listen, guys. Thank you.
All right, Cordell. Appreciate the phone call as always. Jeff, let's start with drafting, say, a wide receiver or tight end, and I would say Yes, potentially on both.
Next year, I think that'll be a high priority.
Yeah, I think so, because Willie Snead, judging how this season has gone, I'm pretty sure he's going to be looking to be elsewhere. And then Brandon Coleman, he's going to be unrestricted after this year as well, so you could be looking for somebody else. Now, Coleman, you might be able to get him back, but I think drafting a wide receiver or looking to see who's around in free agency, they'd probably prefer to draft them because they're very good at getting that done. I think both of those positions should be priorities.
With all the young defensive prospects they have on that side of the ball and the emphasis that they've put on drafting defensive players and hitting on these guys, I think it really frees them up now to just take. I mean, look, if a top pass rusher I think were available, they dive into that because we don't know about Okafor. They certainly can't count on him. He's been injured now 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row. So I could see them going in that direction. But otherwise, man, if they can get a top receiver while everybody else is out there trying to go after these quarterbacks, they could get a really top-flight guy to pair up with Michael Thomas. And, I know he asked about Willie Snead. Willie Snead's like in the witness protection program right now. I don't know what's going on. I think there's more than we know.
Has to be.
There's just something else going on. I mean, I'm totally speculating here, but it just doesn't make any sense. The guy was so productive his first 2 years, and now he's just a non-factor in games.
Me speculating, it's either or a combination of a loss of trust from Sean Payton or Drew Brees.
Right,
it's
because
both.
of that, though. There's something going on that's caused them to de-emphasize him in their offense because he was such a key player for them, and now he's just non-existent out there. And look, Willie Snead was never a great get separation guy. He would find the holes in the zone, kind of like Lance Moore, but he's not a guy that's going to beat a lot of man-to-man coverage routinely.
Yeah, and he's been out outs and being more of a intermediate route guy, so they're using him more in routes that, and he's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, he's been better than we thought.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
And Coleman has kind of tailed off lately. We haven't seen much of Brandon Coleman.
He only catches 1 or 2 a game, but he usually it's an impact play. We didn't see that. There weren't many impact
They need a
plays.
Receiver, let's face it.
And a tight end. I think absolutely agree. So come on back here, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder. Well, they don't have a second.
Right, they really don't.
New Orleans Saints, what can you say?
Shorty.
All right, we got David in Vegas.
Okay.
And Michael in Metairie. David, Vegas, Michael, Metairie.
Got it. Thanks.
9 teams
Coffee.
for the last 3 years.
Just a coffee if you're getting one.
A 7-9
like one Splenda and
Sports
one cream.
1280, New Orleans.
American actress Meghan Markle going to obviously be in for some major lifestyle changes as she plans to wed Prince Harry, the royal commentator, talking to NBC's Today Show.
She's had to give up her job. She's moved to London. She's given up her country. She can't just pop home for Thanksgiving next year.
The 33-year-old prince and 36-year-old Suits actress have been dating for more than a year. Once they tie the knot next spring, the couple will live in Nottingham Cottage at Kensington Palace. Linkin Park sharing the full performance from the Chester Bennington tribute show. The band thanking fans for their support and posted the entire show on Facebook. Members of Avenged Sevenfold, Korn, Bring Me the Horizon, Blink-182, and a ton of others joining the remaining band members for the 31-song set at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. Bennington took his own life in July. Louis Tomlinson set to release his new single, Miss You. Fans of the former One Direction member will also get a chance to watch him perform the song on the finale of the UK's X Factor. Psy is celebrating the fact that his worldwide hit Gangnam Style has crossed the 3 billion views mark on YouTube. The South Korean singer-rapper, producer tweeted his thanks to fans for watching the clip enough to reach the impressive milestone.
Yeah, 1 minute.
100 most viewed video on the streaming platform.
We got two
That's
callers.
Entertainment, Jennifer Pilsoni, NBC News Radio.
Put them in all caps.
Yes! The Jetsons don't have that inflatable musical snowman switched on tonight.
Yeah, I may or may not have accidentally on purpose cut the wires.
I love you. Alexa, play holiday music.
You're my president.
Tens of millions of songs,
We may
one
have-
for
we have
every
talked about
moment.
the Saints
Amazon
the
Music
entire show.
Unlimited. For a limited time only, sign up
Well,
today
tomorrow
and
we'll have
receive
Will
3
on,
months
and
for
we'll get,
99
up to
cents
speed
at
with
Amazon.com.
You want me to try and get like Scott Fowler maybe, or you want to do
I was thinking
One in
Scott.
6
Just
seniors
somebody
face
different
a
than
fear of hunger,
I don't
and
want to be
millions
like
more
Joe.
live in
Oh, they
isolation.
want me again.
Drop off
Right,
a hot
yeah,
meal
yeah,
and
we
save
try and
the
get Scott, or we can get Jordan
Volunteer
even.
for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch
get
break
her.
at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by
let me
Meals
know.
on Wheels
I'll
America
I'll
and
reach
the
out to
Ad
one of them.
Council.
Okay.
Right now, there's a girl in India
And got 8 minutes left in this segment, and David in Vegas, Michael in Metairie.
All right,
who
cool.
dreams of a life of greter dignity and less loneliness. You
I
can
was
help
looking
change
back
the
at,
future of one person in
Oh,
a
let me see
single
who,
moment.
like who was
Begin the
playing. I
change
forgot who was
at
playing, who wasn't in the
unbound.org.
Vikings game. I love how they got 10 men on the field.
I know. First snap of the year.
Yes.
This is Dunc and Holden on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Me and Jeff are giggling as we're looking back, we're talking about who didn't play the first couple of games, and we're looking back at the official stat book from the NFL and who started. And the Saints only have 10 starters on defense because someone didn't know what the hell was going on. Do we know if it was Sterling Moore or Devontae Harris who screwed that up? I don't know.
What I've been told by somebody in the know was that it was Sterling Moore was not on the field, and he got benched because of it, and that's why Devontae Harris got thrust into that role, which pretty much submarined any of their hopes in that first half.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a disciplinary thing, but how the first snap of the year you end up with 10 players on the field? That's a little bit ominous.
Yes, that's why it was ominous going forward. Hey, at least they got it fixed, 2 weeks later.
Very quickly.
Yep. More phone lines, more phone calls. 504-260-1280 is the number to get involved. Look, I was telling Jeff during the break, if we talk Saints for these 2 hours, we talk Saints for these next 2 hours. It's fine with us. Of course, they're the big story. Look, LSU has no opponent this week. Pelicans don't play till tomorrow. We'll be talking about that with our man Will Guillory, who comes on every Wednesday and speaks about that. So look,
we can talk about Tulane getting hosed. We might get to that in the second hour. That was brutal. We got to get to that in the second hour because that's as bad a loss and as bad a way to lose as I can ever imagine.
Yeah, awful, awful. And later on in the week, look, the college football playoff scene. Those rankings come out tonight, and just the matchups that are coming up this weekend are tremendous.
Yes.
I think AP. I saw a note from Ralph Russo from the AP. I think they said it might be one of the first times where 8 top 10 teams play against each other. I can't remember the stat, but it was an incredible stat just to show you how powerful this weekend's going to be.
Great day to just park it on the sofa or in the lazy boy. Get a bunch of nachos.
Or on the bar stool.
Or adult beverage, whatever you want. Yeah, and just take it all in because it's going to be an epic college football Saturday.
No doubt. We'll touch on that, I'm sure, tomorrow and later on in the week. But let's hit the phone lines, 504-260-1280. David in Las Vegas. David, thanks for calling Dunc and Holder. What's up, David?
Larry, Jeff, pleasure to be on with you guys.
You got
I tell you, man, very disappointed in the loss on Sunday. Look, let's face it, there was a lot of mistakes in that game. A lot of mistakes. Between penalties, bad tackling. That probably had to be one of the worst tackling games I've seen the Saints play in a couple of years. I mean, we've had some bad games, but that was an example of just poor tackling, angles. Devontae Harris, I hate to pick on him, but the guy shouldn't have been playing. They should have had somebody else in there. I mean, there were just too many mistakes. But Caro, he's not a cover safety. I mean, this guy is an in-box guy. I'm not sure why they keep trying to put him in that spot. There was no flow to the game. There was absolutely zero flow to the game. We we can't, on the kickoff, in the first play, we kick the ball off, they get to the 40. I mean, our special teams was horrible. And I think that was back-to-back plays, if I'm not mistaken, back-to-back possessions where we kicked it off and they got beyond the 50.
There was a punt return in there.
David.
We're
giving them short field.
Yeah.
We're giving them short field. So.
Well, hey, David, appreciate the phone call. Look, I understand the angst from that game. I do. I just don't think it's as bad as it seems. Look, that was a one-game thing. Personally, I think. Now, the special teams, that's got to get better. Their return coverage has been terrible all year. It hadn't gotten any better. It's actually probably gotten worse.
Well, I was just going to make that point. I noticed it last night. The Saints are 23rd in punt return average in the league, 28th in kickoff return, and in coverage, they are dead last in punt return coverage and 30th in kickoff coverage.
They have gotten worse because they were around 27 and 28 in both of those categories in coverage, and they've gotten way worse.
Yeah, so they're in the bottom quartile in returns and coverage, and that's one of the reasons why they brought in Mike Westhoff, and I'm not sure it's getting any better.
I don't know if it's going to get better with the pieces you got. I mean, what can you do if they can't get it done? I don't care if it's Vince Lombardi of special teams coaches. Look, you got to get some better pieces at some point.
That's something I think Sean Payton will try and concentrate on in the offseason. You thought he did that again this past off. That's the one thing that they haven't hit on in the offseason. They fired Greg McMahon. They brought in Brad Banta.
3 minutes.
And now they're having to go in another direction.
I mean, he's not the end-all, be-all, but you'd have Nate Stupar, and he's usually a special teams ace. He's out, so look, that's something. But hey, you still got to get guys that can get it done. All right, let's go to the phone lines. One more call before we take the top of the hour break. Michael and Metairie. Michael, thanks for calling Dunc and Holder. What's up, Michael?
Hey guys, how y'all doing today?
Doing great.
All right.
Great. I just wanted to call and ask a question. Has anybody put a moniker on when a Saints player jumps into the stands?
I've had somebody email me the fleur de leap. I've heard that.
Yeah.
You're not having it.
It wasn't my email, but that's what I was going to say this morning.
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, hey, it's we didn't see anyone leap into the makeshift suites on the field, even though Kamara ran that way.
Michael, I think that goes back a few years. Somebody did it years ago, and it was a headline in the Times-Picayune. Our headline writers are always great, and they had a huge headline, fleur de leap, in the photo accompanying it. So I think that had some life maybe a decade or so ago.
It wasn't when Jimmy Graham jumped up and the Joker grabbed him on the butt, and it was like Joker Gate.
That's right. That's right. Okay, well maybe that was in my mind then.
Yeah, but Michael, we appreciate it, man. That's still good stuff. I love trying to come up with nicknames and things like that. So keep at it.
Absolutely. All right, Michael, appreciate the phone call. I liked the headline on our Monday paper in the sports section. It was "Ran it," like ran it.
Yeah, I know. Our headline writers are terrific on those days, and they usually nail the mood of the city. They just have a great feel for that, and our headlines in the Times-Picayune always the next day kind of reflect the mood of New Orleanians.
Yeah,
in relation to the Saints.
I think absolutely, yeah. Look, that's why we are who we are. Come on, man.
Right, yeah. But I can't write a headline to save my life.
No.
I'm terrible at it.
We might be better at writing newspaper headlines, but as far as SEO-friendly headlines,
no.
You and me are not the best in the business.
I don't think people know that. In case you're out there listening, you don't know. The writers, we don't write the headlines.
Not in the paper.
No, we have no clue about what's going to be on the headline of our stories or columns.
We have far more talented people who are snappier than we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wittier and more clever.
Hour number 1 is up. Hour number 2 is on the way. Look, we'll talk more Saints-Rams. We'll talk kind of the landscape of the NFL as well, as we're starting to see some things pan out. So, look, Jeff and I back in the saddle from L.A. Jeff went and saw the Brady Bunch house. I went to Sir Restaurant, Vanderpump Rules style. That's how we do it. Little different age gap. So
love it.
Yeah, exactly. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder.
All right. You want anything?
No, you are hacking up, Les. That's good. It's getting better.
Habitat for Humanity.
Well, once you get going, sometimes it...
And so much more.
All right, 6 minutes, pee-pee break.
Any door opens a world.
Time to go tinko.
I'm going, seriously. Turns the page. And where a simple key can unlock a brighter future. You see, Habitat for Humanity builds houses and so much more. What will you build? Visit Habitat.org to learn more.
When you want the biggest stories, only one name comes to mind.
Welcome to TMZ Live.
Stories break because we do the breaking.
We broke a big story. Kylie Jenner is pregnant. Boy, are people interested in this story. So they've been talking to people, with both of them, her and Travis Scott, the baby daddy. He has even said it's a girl.
Bringing what the world wants to talk about first.
Mark Cuban may run for president. And if he does, it will be Mark Cuban versus Donald Trump in the primary. Going right after him.
TMZ Live.
WODT WNOE FM HD2 New Orleans. Listen on the free iHeartRadio app. Search Sports 1280.
Fox Sports trending now.
Multiple outlets are reporting that the recently retired Carlos Beltran, who won the World Series with the Astros this past season, will be the sixth candidate to interview for the vacant Yankees managerial position. Fox Sports' Ken Rosenthal is reporting that the interview will take place on Wednesday in New York. The NFL has made adjustments to their Week 14 schedule, but they were minor. The league moved Dallas at the New York Giants to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, while taking Seattle at Jacksonville and slotting it at 4:25 Eastern. Sunday Night Football will remain with Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Tonight, there are just 5 games on the NBA schedule, including Miami playing at Cleveland. The Cavaliers have won their last 8 straight, and there will be 4 games featuring ranked teams on the college scoreboard, highlighted by number 16 Baylor and number 21 Xavier. I'm Ralph Irvin.
We are Fox Sports.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
American actress Meghan Markle going to obviously be in for some major lifestyle changes as she plans to wed Prince Harry, the royal commentator, talking to NBC's Today Show.
She's had to give up her job. She's moved to London. She's given up her country. She can't just pop home for Thanksgiving next year.
The 33-year-old prince and 36-year-old Suits actress have been dating for more than a year. Once they tie the knot next spring, the couple will live in Nottingham Cottage at Kensington Palace. Linkin Park sharing the full performance from the Chester Bennington tribute show. The band thanking fans for their support and posted the entire show on Facebook. Members of Avenged Sevenfold, Korn, Bring Me the Horizon, Blink-182, and a ton of others joining the remaining band members for the 31-song set at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. Bennington took his own life in July. Louis Tomlinson set to release his new single, Miss You. Fans of the former One Direction member will also get a chance to watch her perform the song on the finale of the UK's X Factor. Psy is celebrating the fact that his worldwide hit Gangnam Style has crossed the 3 billion views mark on YouTube. The South Korean singer-rapper, songer-producer tweeting his thanks to fans for watching the clip enough to reach the impressive milestone. The video remains the 3rd most viewed video on the streaming platform. That's entertainment. Jennifer Bolsoni, NBC News Radio.
If you need a payday loan fast, try LendUp.com. Apply online in minutes on your phone, and you could have cash in your account fast. LendUp.com is the better payday loan, with no hidden fees, and good credit is not required. Visit LendUp.com. LendUp is a licensed credit services organization, not a direct lender, in Ohio and Texas, subject to availability in your state. LendUp. The better way to borrow.
Regardless of who runs the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau until the new
only one I know of is
approved,
that
in the long run, major changes
Carolyn's
are coming
house.
to the agency.
Oh, yeah.
The Trump administration and the Republican
That's the only one I
Congress
know.
are calling it to curb the Bureau's authority to issue regulations, and it could cut
Maybe
its
after the
budget.
town hall meeting,
Consumer
he's like,
advocates say
never
the
mind.
Bureau has returned billions of dollars
You
to
would have,
millions of
man.
consumers
Really?
cheating
That
by
was the
banks and other
oh,
financial
dude.
services.
If there was one for you to go
Opponents
to,
say
that
it
would have been
oversteps
it.
its
It was-
authority. Did you miss Cyber Monday? Don't
I
worry,
didn't hear
just like
anything
Black
about
Friday
it from
promotions
anybody.
lasted at least a month.
Insanity.
Cyber Monday goes on.
Traditional retail websites
Insanity.
and e-commerce giants are also offering online discounts that will go well beyond Monday.
Cyber Monday isn't just one day anymore. It's actually, in fact, the entire week.
To make sure you're really getting the best deal, shopping experts recommend do your homework and compare prices. Use tools like Camel to track price history to make sure you're getting the lowest price. And try installing an extension on your internet browser like Honey or Ebates to find additional discounts or cash back.
NBC's Jolene Kent reporting. U.S. home sales are up, so who's buying? Those who've never owned before. Commerce Department numbers show entry-level buyers are driving sales of newly constructed homes, especially affordable houses. Many of the new homes sold haven't even been built yet. The number of those increased by 30% in October compared to last year. And the international press is descending on Los Angeles this week for the first major U.S. auto show of the season. Elisa Z reports.
The 2017 LA Auto Show features 1,000 new vehicles with more than 6 debuts. Chevrolet will offer the North American debut of the 2019 Corvette ZR1. The new Infiniti QX50 headlines the luxury Japanese automakers display this year, and California's Aria Group, specializing in building concept cars for the big car companies, hints that it will be revealing its own concept this week. The LA Auto Show opens to the public on Friday. Elisa Z, NBC News Radio.
Consumer and business news, Joe McConnell, NBC News Radio.
Whether you're gathered around the dinner table or turning up the volume at a holiday party, amp up the holiday spirit with Billboard Music's exclusive line of electronic products. Featured products on Billboard's store website include Bluetooth headphones, outdoor portable water-resistant Bluetooth speakers, karaoke machines, festival
10 seconds.
More. Billboard headphones and speakers are available at Staples, CVS, and Office Depot. For all products, visit store.billboard.com and give the gift of music this holiday season.
Oh, we got the Cajun Goat on line one. Cajun Goat.
Okay. Dunc and Holder, hour number 2. Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan back here with you after a Thanksgiving vacay / Los Angeles trip to cover Saints-Rams. Of course, the Saints go down 26-20. We're tying a bow around that and trying to figure out how they're going to solve their problems when they take on the Carolina Panthers, the 8-3 Carolina Panthers. Saints-Panthers in a tie for first place, even though right now the Saints have the tiebreaker with the one love edge. My tennis speak coming out. One love edge in head-to-head matchups. And look, hour number 1, talked Saints, took your phone calls. We'll do the same thing in hour number 2. We'll just keep it going as long as you want to talk. We will steer the conversation in that direction. 504-260-80 is the number to get involved. And Jeff, first let's go to the goat that claims to be Cajun eating a tin can. I don't know what he's doing. What Cajun goat? What you got?
Hold on, let me put my tin can down.
There you go. Stop gnawing on it before you get on the air.
There you go. I think there's some things that we're missing about this game that hasn't really been mentioned. Number one, I thought the defense played well considering they were losing 3 of the main guys that play on defense. To give up 26 points, I would have thought with those 3 guys missing that the Saints should have won that game. The other thing is the penalties. I think that some of those penalties were outrageous. I think the flags were going consistently against the Saints. I seen no flags going against the Rams, and they were holding our receivers the whole game. That's how they played man-to-man on us, and they were holding. A few times you've seen Drew Brees even point out, hey, man, what are you going to do? You're calling it on that side. You're not calling it on our side. I don't like to get into the referee part about it, but I really believe in that game. The Vaccaro one on 4th down, he's at the line of scrimmage. He puts his hand on the guy. They call a holding. The guy had him beat by a mile. I mean, it didn't impede the guy's route or anything. And then at the goal line, when Ingram makes the touchdown, their defender ran into our guy. Our guy didn't go hit him. I didn't understand that one either. Maybe y'all can elaborate on those types of penalties because that's a big shift in the game. That's the points to win the game with to me. I just thought the officiating was kind of bad in that game, and it didn't help the Saints playing bad to begin with.
All right, Cajun, go.
Get off and listen to
you got it right. Appreciate the phone call. Just to kind of lay it out there, Saints had 7 penalties for 112 yards. The Rams had 9 penalties for 90 yards. So the Rams actually got penalized more than the Saints did.
And I think the numbers got skewed because there was one big, long pass interference call against P.J. Williams what was that, like a 40-yard pass interference or something?
Yes.
So it made it look worse than the actual numbers. But what Sean Payton was alluding to, I think, and I think it goes back to why they didn't – everybody keeps asking, why didn't they give the ball to Kamara more? Why didn't they run the ball more? Well, I'm just looking at the third quarter. It's a good example. They come out, they get a first down on their first drive of the third quarter. Then they run Ingram for 2 yards. Kamara gets no gain, and then it's third down, and they get a illegal shift penalty. So that kind of short-circuits that drive. The next drive, they come out, get a first down, and then Armstead gets a holding call. Now they're 1st and 19. That short-circuited that drive.
I think that Armstead holding call was probably should have been called on Pete, because I think Pete was the one who got beat.
I think you're right.
And I don't think that one was actually on Armstead. It should have been on Andres Pete. But
third drive.
But what the record is what the record
Yeah,
shows.
third drive, Ingram gets 7 yards. Breeze gets sacked. Mark Ingram called for a chop block on the same play, and they end up 3rd and 14. So the third quarter, all 3 of their drives were short-circuited by sacks or holding calls. So they were struggling up front to protect Breeze. And, you're not going to run the ball when you're in 2nd and 19.
No, you're not. And when you're back on your own edge and you're not feeling great about your protection, it's going to be a challenge. But look, do I think sometimes officiating gets in the way? Yes, but I do feel like that the Saints, it evens itself out. So and even Cajun Goat said, I don't want to get involved in that. But there were some plays where you're wondering, because look, even Michael Thomas, he's not one to go out and complain, and he was pointing and doing this because he was getting mugged.
And that's the way the players have to adjust to how the crew is calling the game. We've seen it over and over when the Saints play a team that plays handsy man-to-man and tries to disrupt their timing. They struggle offensively, but it's up to the receivers to adjust. But in a game like that, they're going to struggle because that is exactly the kryptonite to the Saints offense. I've seen too many teams do it over the years. You get up there, everything on the Saints offense is based on timing. And when we see Drew Brees dropping back, planting that foot, and getting the ball out quick, that's because he's got somebody open, and we all have seen it over the years. That's how the Saints offense really eats up people when Brees gets it out of his hand quick. When he's holding it, that means the receivers aren't getting separation, they're not getting open, and he's having to wait, and it never seems to work out well for the Saints offense. And I think that's exactly the strategy that Wade Phillips employed. And they have a guy, Tremaine Johnson, who can man up with Mike Thomas. He gets beat a few times. It happens when you play a player that great, but for the most part, he held him in check and allowed the rest of their guys to concentrate on Ted Gins of the world and Kobe Fleener and that group.
Remember, the Saints were interested in Tremaine Johnson, and it sounded like he wasn't
right.
keen on coming over here. And I don't want to put a big thing on this, but I will say that you've at least had a couple of familiar faces on the other side on the coaching staff. You had Bill Johnson, you had Aaron Cromer. They certainly know Sean Payton. They certainly know Dennis Allen.
I think that's a very good point.
I think that, and you combine that with someone like a Wade Phillips. And look, Cromer's on offense, and McVay's very good on offense. Bill Johnson's on that side of the football, and it's not like he's got to coach a ton of technique. Those guys are mega talented. So I think that might have played a part in it.
They had a great plan, and I think it was informed by Aaron Cromer and Bill Johnson because they know how Drew Brees and Sean Payton operate, and that a lot of it is get to the line of scrimmage and get them in the right play. And the Rams, conversely, but I don't necessarily think Sean Payton coached a terrible game. I look at it as more, let's hat tip to the Rams for having a really good game plan. Only so many teams can do what the Rams did, get to the line of scrimmage, make these checks and audibles, get the alignment changed, get Kenny Vaccaro in a mismatch. That's a lot on the table for a lot of teams, and you're not going to see Brett Hundley do that for the Packers. He's too young. For Goff to be able to process all that in his second year, I think is remarkable.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily that Brett Hundley's so young because he's been in the NFL longer than Goff. I just think Goff's much better than Brett Hundley.
Right. I guess that's what I mean. Yeah.
Right.
And so you have to kind of credit the Rams and the Saints. Look, if they play them again, I guarantee you they will have a plan for that. They won't show their hand as quickly. But sometimes you just have to – I mean, Peyton Manning made a career out of this, getting to the line of scrimmage, making the checks. But he's Peyton Manning. There's not too many of those guys. But I think it's a tribute to McVay and Goff for being able to pull that off, because they clearly understood what it was going to take to get the Saints defense kind of out of alignment, and they did it.
No, and I'm looking back at some of these penalties. Look, one of the penalties they got called for, and Jeff, you probably remembered it basically a week earlier, where it just looked like miscommunication, and Jared Goff got popped for intentional grounding. He wasn't in some sort of duress. It was just miscommunication. He was in the pocket, he threw it, and then they called. And Sean Payton came out and screaming and got the intentional grounding. So, like that you could argue that shouldn't have even been called.
Well, and I would say this also. Somebody called, I forget which caller mentioned the bad tackling. The plays I remember that stand out to me were them trying to tackle Todd Gurley, and that's Todd Gurley. I mean, that's what he does. He's a big,
who did he fake the shoes out
of? Was it P.J. Williams or somebody?
A corner or someone in the secondary.
The guy's a rare talent. I mean, you could take your Saints glasses off and put them, and all of a sudden, if you're a Rams fan, you're probably calling into some show in L.A. right now going, we couldn't tackle Alvin Kamara. Our defense is terrible. No, Alvin Kamara is a special talent. You have to say the same thing about Todd Gurley. He's obviously a big-time back.
Why don't we take a break right here on the show? We're taking a little early because I want to get in this topic, and this comes from Todd T. up in Jackson, who emailed us. Wanted to know about why didn't they get the ball more in Alvin Kamara's hands. I think people are going to be wondering. He's their best player. He scored 2 touchdowns, had some incredible plays. Why couldn't they get the ball more in his hands? Only 5 carries, and then forget how many receptions he had, but he was the leading receiver, certainly for yards. Let me see here. I'm stumbling. All right, forget it. I'm stumbling. We'll come back. We'll talk about Alvin Kamara. He's probably going to win the FedEx Rookie of the Week award for like the 4th week in a row. It's been incredible. He's now by far the favorite to win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, it's his to lose.
I think it is his to lose, unless Leonard Fournette runs for 1,000 yards the final 5 games of the season. But, yeah, I think Alvin Kamara is going to win that award. But we'll talk about his touches or maybe lack thereof. Coming up next here, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app with Dunc and Holder. Yeah. There's Rob Zombie, White Zone.
Corey Johnson.
LSU coming back from the dead.
4-6.
And you got to give it to Ed Ogeron. I wasn't too keen on the hire. And I'm not going to sit here and say, man, I'm sold on him now, but I love him keeping it together.
Sports 1280.
Yeah, listen to Corey.
My son
Giving credit to
has
Ogeron.
asthma.
I remember distinctly we were doing a
Secondhand
show
smoke has triggered his
after the
asthma
Troy
so
loss, and
badly,
he texted me
he
and
ended
said,
up in the emergency
the
room
rails have
and spent
fallen off.
multiple nights in intensive care. Now he's
I go,
on
you got to give it time. We were talking on the air, you and I.
My tip to you
And he's like,
is don't be
full
shy
scale,
about
gotta fire
telling
him
people
and all
not
this
to
stuff.
smoke around your kids.
Half of U.S. kids are exposed to secondhand
Kamara had a
smoke.
74
If you or
yard
someone
run, then he
you
had
know
4
wants help,
carries
call
for
1-800-QUIT-NOW.
13 yards.
A message from the...
Josh in Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah, Corey actually did sports almost his whole show. He only talked about beignets for like 15, 20 minutes.
Trillion. There are 59 million. What does he say? There are 59,000 million restaurants in America.
Chinese restaurants.
And only one made the top 50. Trillion.
Business as brands could on the
Love it.
images that they're capturing. YouTube says
As I swim through the peanuts in the Kung Pao
There's
sauce.
a new update to their app.
Oh, man. And then he talks about the almondine sauce over at Mandina's.
Yes.
And then the limone sauce at Fausto's. I'm like, you're just so saucy, Corey.
Days after the game was released
Saucy.
in July of 2016, there was 286 additional crashes in Indiana alone compared to the same period before. 100
All right, 30 seconds.
incidents were near Pokestops. Tech Report, Larry Olson, NBC News Radio.
Introducing the all-new Hisense Smart TV series. Packed with premium features like Ultra LED technology, 4K resolution, and high dynamic range, the Hisense Smart TVs produce vibrant images and enhanced contrast that are unapologetically amazing. Not to mention, they also come equipped with entertainment must-haves like ultra smooth motion for fast-moving scenes and iHeartRadio for all your favorite music and live stations. Smart
coming back.
Grab your Hisense Smart TV at select Best Buy stores today.
Chill, right on my side is my
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
504-260-1280 is the number to get involved. Talking Saints Rams, talking Saints going forward as they take on the Carolina Panthers. Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan back in the saddle with you here at our NOLA.com Times-Picayune studios. Let's hit the phone lines. Let's go out to Sacramento. Josh, thanks for calling Duncan Holder. What's up, man?
Hey, guys. Hey, thanks for taking my call. And then you guys were talking about the guy that Todd Gurley made with. Do we really even have to even think about who he made
I'm
with?
assuming it had to have been Devontae Harris then.
Yeah, it was.
just a quick assumption. Oh, poor Devontae. Oh, he's so misunderstood.
I started watching the game film, and it literally, all the highlights of the Rams, it all involved 21 Devontae Harris. Like, it seriously. There was like maybe one or two where Kenny Vaccaro, like I said, I don't really blame him. We're asking him to do a lot. He plays around the line, all that stuff, but we're asking him to do a lot. At this point, he's Roman Harper 2.0. But
agreed. That's a great point.
There. My question is basically, I don't see the Saints run a lot of 5 receiver sets. If you wouldn't go like I watched the game film, the Rams when they were in that 5 receiver set, they were gashing the Rams 30, 20 yards with Michael Thomas, and my question is what are the Saints trying to do to get Michael Thomas involved? Because I feel like it's our passing game, it's going to lack a little bit, but not that much. Like I feel like. Our team's just game planning for Michael Thomas? Because outside of that, I don't see anybody else really doing anything other than like Ted Ginn getting open on a bad coverage or something of that nature. But I feel like Michael Thomas is lacking, and we don't run a lot of 5 receiver sets anymore. It's kind of wondering how are we waiting later in the year to start incorporating this or what?
Well, I think they didn't run a lot of empty backfield sets, which is what you're talking about. Because I don't think they felt good about their protection. And Sean Payton's always going to want to leave a back end to help out in protection. And at the end of the game, the Rams were in prevent. They were playing back deep. They weren't letting anything get over their heads. So they were able, I think, to do that in that situation that they weren't going to do it because of the way the Rams were playing earlier in the game. And I don't think they feel really good about using Tommy Lee Lewis as a receiver right now. He's really not part of their receiver rotation. So you have to line up Kamara as a back outside wide, things like that. I think, but it's a valid point.
That kind of begs the question. Then is it Austin Carr time? Because Willie Snead, I feel like he's either out of shape or just not 100% from the hamstring, and I feel like Austin Carr had enough time to sit and gather enough time in the playbook and sit through a couple of film sessions. So. Do you see Austin Carr getting some playing time now? Because I really feel like that's our only option at this point is to get another playmaker in there because something's up with Willie Snead.
Hey, Josh, appreciate the phone call as always from out in Sacramento listening to us on the iHeartRadio app. Look, I know Austin Carr was kind of a sensation in New England in the preseason. Do I know how good he is against full-blown competition? I don't, and I don't think the Saints do really either. And who was that? I think Cordell in Minnesota was asking about Arthur Millette. I think the same goes there. I think those two guys get good looks this next offseason, and maybe you see more of them next season. I think that's certainly a possibility. But look, let's be honest. The Saints are 8-3.
Yeah, their offense is second in the league.
It's not totally broken. I do understand, though, when you're going up against big teams and you don't have the quality of receiving depth that you had last year. Look, Willie Snead is not the player he was. That's noticeable. You don't have Brandon Cooks. I think that's an element where teams certainly focus on Michael Thomas. Look, he's talked to me about how teams try to zero in on him and say, have everyone else beat you. And that's what he's dealing with here in his second year.
When you trade away a Brandon Cooks, you lose something, and you gained Ryan Ramczyk. So you gained in the offensive line, which has been a strength of the team, but your receiving core is not as good, so therefore Sean Payton adjusts. He's starting to be more run-oriented because his best perimeter skill set players are his running backs right now, along with Michael Thomas. So that's why this team is more balanced, but I think it's more just a reflection of who his perimeter players are, and we've talked about that before. Year to year, he morphs this offensive package around his best perimeter players. Last year, it was the receivers when he had Cooks, Thomas, and Snead. This year, he's got Kamara, so he's going to use the running backs more. That's all this is. This isn't any different than 5 or 6 years ago when they had a dynamic all-pro tight end and Jimmy Graham, and all of a sudden they were going to the tight end all the time. It's simply a case of Sean Payton utilizing his perimeter players, and right now they need another receiver, a dynamic player, but every team in the league could say that for the most part. I mean, it's hard to have 2 top-flight receivers. How many teams have that?
The Saints were extremely rare last year that they had 3 receivers almost get 1,000 yards. And then Mark Ingram got 1,000 yards, but it just shows you how much they had to lean on the offense. They probably had longer fields, and defense is at times was giving them some shorter fields. Even though, look, this Saints defense isn't taking the football away like it used to. It got 1 takeaway, kind of a fluky interception, and then nothing really happened. But the big question, like I said, from Todd T up in Jackson, emailed us asking about Kamara. And so many people have either social media or just talking to me. Why didn't Alvin Kamara get as many touches? Because obviously he's the Saints' best playmaker. He had 11 total touches, 188 total yards, 2 touchdowns. And you look at it, he had the most touches outside of Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram had 13 touches. Kamara had 11 touches. Look, Ginn had 7 receptions. Thomas had 5 receptions. Snead, Fleener, 1 reception. I could tell you part of the reason why he didn't get as many touches. Just go back and look at how many plays the Saints actually ran in this game. They only ran 52 offensive plays.
I've said that all along. There weren't that many opportunities.
They got crushed in the time of possession. 35-26. The Saints only held the ball for 24-34. When you don't have as many plays, I mean, you can't get them the ball 50% of the time. It's just not the way it is. And look, I understand why people see that, and sometimes, look, Alvin Kamara is not available on a play. Like, he's got to come out the game. You can't throw him every time if people are around him all the time. It's a balancing act. I just think the flow of the game, it didn't have to do with getting Kamara the ball 40 times. That was not an option. Just wasn't.
Yeah, and I think the Saints last offseason, when they decided to trade Brandon Cooks, they made a conscious decision of, let's get better on defense, let's get our offensive line better, let's run the ball better. And that's what they are now. They've improved in all those areas, but they're probably another year away, another offseason away from getting back to being that explosive offense, because they had to, frankly, take a couple steps back offensively to make other parts of the team better. And they're better able to, I think, win in different ways now, but they're not going to just blow you away with their offense. Even though it's still a very good offense, it's not like it was in some of the years we've seen in the past.
And here's what the Saints can do. They have actually flexibility, because think of all the people we're talking about. Alvin Kamara, rookie salary. Michael Thomas, he's on a rookie contract, a second-round pick, cheap. Ted Ginn, doesn't cost a ton of money. All of these players, Mark Ingram's not making bank. All of these spots you can improve upon. You can either, if you love someone in free agency, and you can make a trade for someone, you can afford them, or you can draft a tight end or a wide receiver. They've got more flexibility than we've seen. And on defense,
excellent point.
Ken Crawley, cheap. Marshawn Lattimore, cheap. Sheldon Rankins is still relatively cheap. The linebackers, they're pretty much set, and they're not breaking the bank. You've got flexibility. Now, are you going to have to pay Drew Brees? Sure, but you'd be paying him anyway. Doesn't matter.
You're paying him right now.
Right.
So the only person they're going to have to pay coming up, or make a decision to pay, is Kenny Vaccaro.
Right.
Are they going to pay him or not? I'll be surprised if they do.
I would be surprised if they do too, just because I think they feel like maybe Von Bell can get that going, and obviously they like Marcus Williams and they could do some things. But yeah, Kenny's going to get paid. That's the thing.
Somebody will pay him.
Somebody's going to pay him. And we're not saying that the Saints couldn't use Kenny Vaccaro. If I'm Kenny Vaccaro, I chase the money. a million times out of a million times because your shelf life in the NFL is limited. It's not forever.
And I think they'll make him an offer, but they're going to make him an offer at their number. The way Mickey Loomis operates, he's going to say, look, here's what we think there's value to you coming back, but it's not going to be as good an offer as he's going to get on the open market. And then if he walks away, he walks away. That's how the Saints operate, and I think it's probably smart in this situation because they can really get better much quicker now because they have some cap flexibility where they were hamstrung in years past with all these bad deals. I mean, the really bad one they have on the books right now is Kobe Fleener deal, and that was a bad deal. I mean, they way overpaid him.
Well, what about Teron Armstead? Is it time to question that deal?
Well, yeah, because of his injury history.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean,
when he's good, he's one of the greats. When he's not, we've had to ask that question far too many times. And Teron's one of my favorite guys in the locker room.
Right.
But it's fair to question that. So
he's a guy that looks to me, just in watching him, that's bulked up so much to play left tackle in the NFL. He's not normally that big a human being, and he's bulked up, and I think it leads to some of his injury problems. I mean, he has all these soft tissue injuries and things that happen. He's had knee injuries, and it's a rough game, but he's a guy that has to stay healthy, and he hasn't been able to.
Yeah, so we'll see how the Saints have to adjust with that possibly going forward as well. So let's take a break right here on the show. Again, open phone lines, no guests. We haven't talked about the Saints in a week, so we're just letting it fly, and I know that's what everybody's wanting to talk about. So if you want to get involved in the conversation, we got about a half hour left. 504-260-1280 is the number to get involved. And, Jeff, I'm just going to kind of give you a preview to my column tomorrow when we come back.
Little tease?
It's about, well, I'm probably just going to give some of the stuff away, unfortunately. But it's just too interesting, so I want to talk about Cam Jordan. Look, 10 sacks through 11 games. That's one of the quicker routes to 10 sacks. Even though you look back at some history, boy, some Saints had some studs on defense. Where was the offense then? Oh, where was it then in the Dome Patrol days?
Yeah, when they had Ricky Jackson and Pat Swilling.
Wayne Martin was a monster too.
The beast.
Yeah, beast, exactly.
The beast mode.
Yep. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Duncan Holder.
Your forecast on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
This report is brought to you by McDonald's.
Happy Tuesday from the Fox 8 Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino, and temperatures will climb into the mid-70s today with more sunshine and dry skies.
What it been like
Overnight, we'll stay dry with temperatures falling into the 50s on both sides of the lake and a few more clouds around. There could even be a few patches of fog. From the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino. Have a great day.
So when are you
Download
going
the McDonald's app and get a free large soft drink with any purchase.
Early, right? We got to be over there early
right
to
now,
do the
get
show.
any size soft drink or sweet tea for just
Wednesday
$1 anytime at
Oh,
McDonald's.
that's smart. That's
Limited
what I need
time.
to do.
Participation may vary.
Yeah,
See
so we can be over there.
mcdonalds.com for details.
And I'm flying home crack of dawn Friday morning to get back in here.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do the same
I mean,
thing.
she'd never tell
Yeah,
you
I
that.
can send you
She's
mine.
humble and
Gotta have
perfect.
it.
She likes everyone. She even likes her untidy roommate's weird guinea pig. Allison, wait, are you texting and driving? Allison, no. That's the exact opposite of what I was just saying about you. Why, Allison? Why? Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
A California
like
woman is suing the
6:45
popular
Wednesday night.
cosmetics chain
Yeah.
Sephora,
So,
claiming she got herpes virus
Fine.
from
Just
sampling
find Delta.
lipstick at an LA location.
You can catch the herpes simplex virus
I think it's
from
like
an inanimate object such as lipstick. In fact,
Yeah.
that virus
Okay.
can
Booked it late.
survive
Yeah.
on the surface of a lipstick
Yeah, that's
tube
not bad.
for
Yeah, I
up
mean,
to
it's
a
not
week.
bad.
Dermatologist Dr. Whitney Bode telling NBC's Today Show to try out makeup on the top of your hand rather than on your lips or eyes.
Yeah, and then
Sephora
fly
told Today
home.
the health and safety of our clients is our foremost priority. Can arts and crafts projects help veterans cope with post-traumatic
Yeah,
stress
I mean, I fly out at
disorder? Elisa
7:30
C. has some
Eastern.
answers.
And get back
Non-traditional
here at 8
therapies
or
are now
9.
being used to help veterans cope with PTSD. An organization called Help Heal
I just
Veterans
forwarded it to you,
provides
but yeah,
free
I mean, I fly,
therapeutic
I'll
craft
get
kits
back
to
here at 8 or
hospitalized
9.
and homebound vets. They say these
Yeah,
kits at
because
least
the other one is too,
temporarily
you don't want
relieve
to get back back like 9:05.
Have we booked our hotel yet?
Conditions.
Are we just going to stay at that airport one or the one down the autograph, one down near the stadium? Those are usually the two we stay at.
It's order pickup time all the time
We might need
at
to do our
Target.
own. I don't know
So,
when Josh
here's
and
your
Irving
cozy up
They
on the
might be
couch
going
with
Thursday.
30 seconds.
check things off your
You'd rather just
ever-growing
stay at
wish
the
list at
stadium?
Target.com
I mean, the
and have it
airport right
waiting
there,
for
or
you at your
one
Target
down near the
store.
stadium?
Guide
Check
to
out the
saving
prices.
big this
All right.
holiday season.
mind
Beat the
doing that?
crowds
No, I'll
and
do it right
skip the
now.
lines,
I'll
you
do it
savvy
after the show.
savers.
Yeah.
Order pickup is the quickest Target run you're ever going to make.
I think either one
Get
of those
in,
will be
get
fine.
out, and go on your Merry Christmas
yeah.
way. Order online at Target.com and pick up in store. Some restrictions apply. See store for details.
Whether you ride the wave or like to growl, we're talking your teams. Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Dave, this isn't enough torture, man. Jeff's jamming over here. We need to frighten him.
I like Torture Tuesday.
No, you don't.
I do. I'm liking it.
There, I got to slowly convert him.
I know, but this is still a little too peppy. I mean, we need some very
I feel
dangerous.
like punching something right now.
Right.
Going to the dark side.
You need like some rage against the machine or something like that.
That's coming up.
Yeah, baby. Me and Dave, we're such on the same wavelength. It's how it always is. Welcome back, Duncan Holder, Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan here with you. Got about, say, 26 minutes left in the show, so if you want to get involved, we've been taking phone calls, emails throughout the show. Been a really good show for if you want to get involved. So 504-260-1280 is the number. And wanted to talk about Cam Jordan, certainly having a Pro Bowl year. 10 sacks already through 11 games. He is only 2 away from the league lead. That's Chandler Jones and Everson Griffin. DeMarcus Lawrence and Calais Campbell have 11.5, and Joey Bosa has 10.5. And then there's Cam Jordan with 10. And I'm going to butcher the guy's name from Jacksonville. I could say,
You are going to butcher that.
I could say his first name.
Don't even try.
Yannick Noah, except it's not Noah. Naga, whatever.
You got no shot.
Yeah, that guy. He's got 10 sacks as well. Terrell Suggs is 9.5. Look, and Clowney has 9. Both of those two guys were dominant last night in the game. That was
Clowney
boring.
is a monster.
Yeah, imagine if they were like full strength
with Watt and Marcellus.
Yeah. It'd be a different team.
Clowney is going to get paid major money, and he deserves.
He's so young too. Still,
right?
So young.
I mean, he's just throwing offensive linemen around like they're ragdoll. I've never seen anything like it. Everybody knows that they have to block him now with Watt not in the lineup, and nobody can block him. And credit the Texans; they're moving him around to try and free him up so you can't concentrate on him. The Saints do that with Cam Jordan a lot, but this guy's a different kind of defensive lineman.
They were putting him as like a middle linebacker and shooting him up the gap, and they didn't know what to do with it.
I know, because he's so agile and explosive. He's kind of got linebacker agility in the size of a defensive end. He's really a unique talent.
Yeah, but Cam Jordan, third time in his Saints career that he's hit double-digit sacks. And you look at some of the numbers, and you probably think, man, where does Cam Jordan kind of line up as far as in the history of the Saints? Right now he's 5th in total sacks, and so he's behind Will Smith, Pat Swilling, Wayne Martin, and Ricky Jackson. Some pretty esteemed company. At some point he's going to catch Will Smith because he's not too far away from him. And Jeff, we were talking about before the show how, look, Cam's already doing this, and if he could play another 6-7 years in the league. Look, he's 28. He turned 28 in July. So he's still, as far as defensive linemen concerned, you could play another good 6 years. If you're a stud, say a Dwight Freeney still playing, and he's up in age, and you look at Ricky Jackson and those type of guys. So I think we're just starting to see the apex of Cam Jordan's career, and we're still going to see him be at a Pro Bowl level. Look, but like I said, I haven't backed down from my proclamation that I think he's the best overall defensive end in the NFL as far as agility against the run, can rush the passer, can block passes. He did that a couple times in Los Angeles, and so look, he's having a monster year. And you called it way back when. You said you thought he was going to have a monster year, and you were correctly prognosticated.
Prescient, right? But you and I have talked about this before, too. The thing I appreciate about Jordan more than anything, 7 seasons, he started 106 of 107 games. The only time he didn't start, there was one game his rookie year, for whatever reason he didn't start. But he's played in every game and started every one but one. He's available every week. And that's incredible, that durability, that dependability, to where the defensive coaches know they're going to have him available every week. And you can't put a price tag on what that's worth to the team. He's been playing hurt. Every player in the NFL is playing hurt for the most part. But he's there every week and brings his lunch pail and produces. At one point in the game, I noted he had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups. He was a one-man wrecking crew out there, keeping them in the game single-handedly, because really there wasn't a whole lot else going on defensively outside of what he was doing.
No, and Sean Payton brought that up after the game, how they didn't rush the quarterback as well as they're used to as well. And that's a combination of things, if you ask me. A combination of trying to adjust to life without Alex Okafor, because I think he's going to be a bigger loss than maybe we anticipated, because in pass rushing situations, you're looking at, say, Trey Hendrickson, or we saw more Haile Kikaha this week. Also, you can't be as risky in the blitz because you can't trust the back end. I think the back end helps get pressure, and then the pressure helps the back end, and the fact that you've got injuries on both sides of that is going to hinder you. And against, say, someone as offensively savvy as a guy calling plays like Sean McVay, and a guy who's certainly improving with every game with Jared Goff, it's going to hurt you. Now, I'm wondering how much, say, Cam Newton, because, look, we saw them blitz the hell out of Cam Newton in Week 3, and they certainly affected him. And Cam Newton is not playing all that well right now,
right,
to be honest with you.
He's down in the bottom third of the league in quarterback efficiency. His touchdown to interception ratio is not very good, but they're winning. They're winning with defense and running the ball. I think they're a very well-coached team, but they're beatable, and I think the Saints are going to bring their A game this week. And I'll be surprised if the Saints don't win. I really will. They'll have to play a bad game in my mind to lose this game.
I don't know if I'd be surprised if they lost the game. I just think that, what if Cam Newton gets hot? Like, he can get hot, but the fact that he can get so cold, there's no middle ground with him. He can either play really well or just go in the tank. And we saw the Saints, and I'm going to put some of that on the Saints, and I'm going to put some of that on Cam Newton, because he was missing guys who had some openings. Like, Ken Crawley could have gotten beat. Remember how Ken Crawley was like the highest graded corner in the NFL according to PFF?
Yes.
Well, some of those, if Cam can make the throw, that grade is not going to be that high.
He had 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. His quarterback rating, he was sacked 4 times. His quarterback rating against the Saints was 43.8. That's brutal.
They were blitzing the hell out of him,
And
too.
look, last week against the Jets, they won. You mentioned how they got defensive and a special teams touchdown. His rating was 59.8. On the year, he's got 14 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So he's not lighting it up by any means, but they're still winning somehow.
And if I'm not mistaken, Marshawn Lattimore didn't even play that game. It was P.J. Williams. It was Ken Crawley. Lattimore wasn't in that game. Now, do I know if Lattimore is going to be playing in this game coming up? I don't know. I said this last week on one of our shows, whether it was last Monday or Tuesday. If I'm the Saints, I'm not rushing Lattimore back. And if I got to hold him out one more week and get him ready to be geared up against Julio Jones, who had a game of the ages this past weekend, that's what I'm doing. I'm preparing him for Julio, and I'm moving wherever Julio is. That's where I'm moving Marshawn Lattimore.
Did you see his game on Sunday?
Like 250 yards receiving,
and at least 2 touchdowns. I know,
yeah.
And that makes you appreciate Julio Jones. What we're seeing teams do to Michael Thomas, and he's even talked about it. Teams are shadow covering him, using a cloud over the top. That's what happens when you become a number 1 receiver, and Julio Jones faces that every week because he is a dynamic playmaker, and the Saints have to have a plan for him, but easier said than done when you're 6'4", 6'5", and can run like he can and has a vertical jump. The guy's he's an elite player, and the Falcons know that they have to get the ball to him, but they've got other good receivers too. I mean, Sanu is a good receiver. Hardy is a good receiver. The running backs are both dynamic out of the backfield. That's a hard team to defend, as we've known for the last year and a half.
And when the Saints play the Falcons in about a week and 8 days or so?
10 days.
Yeah, in 10 days they'll have back to back big time NFC South opponents. They'll probably have to prepare for Devontae Freeman, who it looks like he could be back this week in that backfield with Tevin Coleman. So, look, the Falcons are starting to get better, and so it goes back to your column that you wrote this weekend after the Rams game, that these two games, division games, because imagine if the Saints lose those two games, they fall behind both Carolina and Atlanta in the standings, and yet they could still be the 6th seed in the wild card. That's how good the NFC South is right now.
That's why this next month or so is going to shake. It's going to determine everything left. And Mike Triplett, after the game, we were talking, our former colleague now at ESPN, about, boy, if ever the schedule didn't play out for the Saints, I mean, I think for the most part it's played out well for them. But the one thing it hasn't played out well for them is the Atlanta part of it, because you wanted to play them about a month ago. Now they kind of seem like they've got things figured out, and they're a much more formidable team than they were when they were trying to get their offense figured out and how they were going to get the ball to. I think it took Steve Sarkisian a little while to get into a rhythm there, and now they've got a huge game this week at home against Minnesota. I think it'll tell us a lot about Atlanta.
At this rate, if you're a Saints fan, you might as well be pulling for Minnesota.
Yeah, what do you pull for if you're a Saints fan? You can't pull for the Falcons.
Yeah,
it's impossible.
And we've talked about all this, how every team's kind of playing each other. So you might as well just have one, say, go ahead of the pack, because I don't know if the Saints are going to be able to catch the Eagles and have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. I think if you're the Saints, you want to win the division just so you at least get one home game, and if you could sneak up to number 2 and get a bye, of course that would be great. And as long as the Saints can get to the postseason, and if they have their pieces as far as, say, Lattimore and Crawley back healthy going into the playoffs, I think you feel much, much better about their chances with those two guys than as opposed to what they've got going right now.
And here's why,
regardless of where you play.
Here's why they're all playing each other, and it's why every year when the schedule comes out, and Larry and I are asked by our editors to do a schedule evaluation, and we have to write about the schedule. If you looked at the Saints schedule back in April when it came out, it looked pretty easy in some ways, but the Saints were playing the third-place schedule. You know who the third-place teams were? Minnesota, Washington, and the LA Rams.
Now
all the teams that are in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, Washington's moving themselves back up, even after the Saints lost.
So it seemed like then, they're playing an easier schedule, when actually, and they're all playing each other as well. The Rams probably feel the same way. The third place schedule in the NFC actually is much more difficult than the first place schedule, when Green Bay doesn't have Aaron Rodgers, Dallas is without Ezekiel Elliott and Tyron Smith. So the first place schedule is what you wanted, not the third place schedule.
Did Philadelphia finish 4th? Is that part of their reasoning?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's worked out for them to some degree, because they're playing Chicago and San Francisco, who are still down.
Oh yeah, and their division's not great this year either.
Right, but they're getting ready. Their schedule toughens here now.
Because they play the West, yeah. So and then so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Absolutely. One more segment here, so come on back on a Tuesday here, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, on the iHeartRadio app. Duncan Holder.
Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses.
Okay, so
why are you wearing your old badge?
I'm a First Amendment absolute.
Mornings 5 to 8.
Oh yeah.
Open up phone
I don't know what I'm doing.
And let people just tee off on.
I don't know why I put it on.
Why
Your badge
because
like
one, I know I'm not.
So wait, you're going over Wednesday night, right?
Allowing
so
more voices
you get over. What time you get over?
Always better than less.
Hey, real quick, guys. When y'all go to Atlanta, y'all just gonna go there on Thursday, so you need the studio Thursday, and you're flying back Thursday night, Friday morning.
Friday morning.
Yeah, we'll be back
Friday.
We land at 8 a.m. Central.
We'll be back here Friday.
So okay.
We will be.
But Thursday we need some. We're flying over to Atlanta Wednesday night, so we just need the studio somewhere in Atlanta
for
on
Thursday morning. Okay,
right.
all right.
Yeah, just one day.
Yeah, I'm working on that right now. I just got a response. I just double checking. All right, cool.
Better earn that big promotion money, man. Come on.
I know. Look out.
All the time.
Well, it's funny. I got no problem saying I don't know shit. I mean stuff.
Careful.
Sorry, YouTube.
Virgin ears on YouTube.
They're virgin ears. But I was like, look, because I know we had, everybody had talked to y'all about using iHeart Studios across the country, but I was like, I'm not sure who I'm supposed to kick this up the food chain to. So I'm like, here, y'all play with it.
Right.
.com.
And we've only needed it that one time.
Yeah, right.
And that
The
was
second
easy,
annual Strikes for Kids Bowling Classic
Yeah,
is
that
Sunday,
went by.
December
That was
10th
seamless.
at the
Like, it
Fulton
was-
Alley Lane.
Yeah, that worked out
All
well.
proceeds will benefit the Strikes for Kids.
I might go
Christmas
over a
Giver.
little earlier than you so I can
Provide
save it.
hundreds of New Orleans
save it
area kids
money.
with a wrapped toy for Christmas. This year's event will be hosted by Saints
I leave at
linebacker
5.
Craig Robertson and his teammates. So come out for a great day of bowling for a
I'm not
great
gonna
cause.
stop going
Go
to Atlanta. That's a nonstop every time.
StrikesForKidsNewOrleans.com.
What? There's all these one-stop flights.
I went to Atlanta once. I hated every second of it.
Yeah,
I do not like
Did you
it.
see 40's tweet on Sunday? He said something like,
"You can change all that.
if
When
you
you
really
become a
want to hate
compassionate
somebody and
child
want to make them
sponsor, just a
suffer,
little more than a
send them
salary
through
day brings
Atlanta
hope.
Hartsfield
Find
Airport
out.
on a Sunday after Thanksgiving or something.
Oh.
So you know he was in hell.
I'm so glad.
I think he said like the security lines are massive.
Du hast mich. Dunc and Holder now. Josh it.
All right, don't murder Larry, Jeff.
New Orleans.
Du hast mich. Du hast.
Get with it, Jeff.
Wow. Where's the bat? I need to bite the head off a bat.
Awesome.
You gotta let it play just for like a second more to where it really gets hardcore. Listen, Jeff, dude, here it goes.
This is
yes.
Headbang. I need to nail a live chicken to the door stoop.
Dave, the artist is on the tip of my tongue. Who is this?
Rammstein.
That's it. See?
Rammstein. Depends on what part of Germany you're from.
Exactly. Jeff, now you're getting an education here on Torture Tuesday. Yeah. Even though some of it was like, some of the torture was like if I had a feather and I was like tickling your nose. Some of the songs that Dave was playing, but that was like legitimate Torture Tuesday.
Yeah, we got a little darker as the program went along. I like it.
Even though we were trying to lighten the mood, I guess, a little bit, talking about how well Cam Jordan is playing and Alvin Kamara's pretty swell, but yeah, it all goes back to the Saints lost, and now their injuries might catch up with them, and who knows what's going to happen. They can miss the playoffs.
Does Pantera qualify as a
yes.
Torture Tuesday?
Yes. Why do you think when we had Scott Shanley on last Tuesday, it was right up his alley?
Right.
Because they're boys.
Right. Well, I didn't know Pantera what genre they fell into. I assumed they did.
They fall into the Torture Tuesday playlist. Yeah, I think that would properly make that happen. But Jeff, let's look at the landscape of the rest of the NFL while we got a couple more minutes. And I mentioned it earlier in the show, but it seems like we're starting to see at least who could possibly be number one, number two in the NFC. Almost like I remember maybe a week ago where I was talking about, look at it in terms of the Masters on its moving day, that third quarter of the schedule where you start to see kind of going around that final turn where you see who the kind of the haves and the have-nots are going to be, and at least at the top part of the schedule of the rankings as far as the standings. I mean, that you're seeing Philly start to pull away. You're seeing at least Minnesota starting to distance themselves now that they're 9-2 and the other two teams are 8-3. But I'm curious to see how Minnesota plays at Atlanta. I'm curious to see how Philly does the back-to-back West Coast swing. That schedule, geez, whoever did that to them, it was torturous. At Seattle and then at the Rams. And you said it. I don't know if it's true, but
It's got to be true.
I said it last week though that I just assumed that they would be staying out there. Why?
They are.
Okay.
They're practicing at the StubHub Center all week.
Makes sense.
And getting ready for that game, and will be interesting to see how they handle that. They're a team that's kind of in the last month or so they're winning by 4 touchdowns almost every game. They're really, as much as I doubt them, they at least are dominating these teams that they should dominate. It's hard to really question them right now.
Well, I can still question them. Their strength of victory as far as wins, they're at 0.382%. That's not a percent. They're at 0.382 as opposed to The strength of the Saints wins are .466. Strength of the Vikings wins .455. Basically, they have of any of the top 6, their strength of wins is the worst. Their strength of schedule is the worst. So these next 2 weeks, I want to really see what Philadelphia is going to bring to the table against at Seattle, at the Rams. Both of those teams are fighting for their their playoffs lives. And look, right now Seattle's 7-4. And they play the Rams at some point. So look, it might flip. You never know.
Yeah, no, but look, they beat the Bears 31-3. I mean, that's pretty dominant. I know that the Saints beat the Bears. It was a little more competitive game than that. And I know trying to compare games is foolhardy, but they are blowing teams out. Their last 3 wins have been last 4 wins: 33-10, 51-23, 37-9, 31-3. I mean, that's dominant.
Yeah,
now,
I guess that's pretty good.
We'll learn about them though in these 2 games. I mean, at Seattle, that's as tough as it gets, and then the Rams. I think they can come back to the NFC pack here in the next 2 weeks. I think they go 0-2.
You do?
Yeah, I think they go 0-2, and then it's wide open.
That would help the Saints for sure.
If the Saints go 1-1 in these 2 games, beat Carolina, maybe drop the game in Atlanta, they're fine. Because then I think they can easily win their final 3 and end up going 4-1 in this stretch. And I think that's going to be good enough to get one of the buys.
Well, it would be fine if Atlanta loses to Minnesota. I think that would be fine if they ended up losing to Minnesota and then happened to beat the Saints, because the Saints would have gotten, in your kind of direction, they would have gotten the win at Carolina. So
don't you think 12-4 gets one of the buys? I don't know. I'll be surprised.
No,
if 12-4 doesn't.
This could be a point where, like in 2011, the Saints were 13-3 and they were the 3 seed. If the Eagles play as well, if Minnesota loses 1 more game the rest of the way, then they would be 13-3. If the Eagles lose 2 more games, they're 13-3. And 12-4 might get you playing wild card weekend.
Minnesota's at Atlanta, at Carolina next 2 weeks. So, like I said, I mean, these teams, just by deductive reasoning, they're all playing each other, so there's going to be losses mounting. Somebody has to lose. Carolina, Atlanta, or Minnesota has to lose in the next.
Well, Minnesota might be doing you some favors. If they go and beat both of those teams, there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to win out.
Well, they've got 2 wins for sure: Cincinnati at home and the Bears at home. And I would say Green Bay, the way they're playing, I mean, they've been competitive, but they're not the same team. They've got 2.5 wins in my book. But I think they're going to lose both those games.
You think they're going to lose at Atlanta and at Carolina?
Yes. I'm not a Case Keenum believer. Sorry. Just not.
2 minutes.
Why not?
I don't know. I'm just not.
Adam Thielen, stud. He's just like Randy Moss.
I don't know. I think what happens is Atlanta beats them, and then they're going to go to Carolina after Carolina's going to have been beaten by the Saints, and you're going to get their best shot because they'll have just lost, and Minnesota's going 0-2.
All right, so I'll backtrack. We know who the number 1 team is in the NFC.
Yes,
we know that.
But what if they lose these next 2 games? All of a sudden they got 3 losses.
I just don't see. I could see that if Washington went up to Seattle and won, Eagles can certainly go up to Seattle.
That's true. I got to give you that. But I don't see them losing the last 3 games. The Giants, the Raiders at home, and the Cowboys at home. You're right. They're not going to lose any of those.
No, the Cowboys will be in the tank, and they'll be ready to get rid of Jason Garrett and Dak.
Well, Jerry Jones is taking over as the NFL commissioner, so
by then already?
Yeah, they'll be in total disarray without their fine leadership of their owner.
Pretty sure that's not going to happen. Isn't Jerry the one who's getting in trouble now that he tried to coup?
Yeah. I think that's supposed to happen this week or next. The new extension for Goodell. Which will make Saints fans very happy, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, they love
something terrible with you out the door.
Roger Goodell, absolutely. So, great show, great calls from all of you listeners. Appreciate the interaction. We will talk more than Saints tomorrow, but the injury report will come out tomorrow afternoon, but Sean Payton will speak to the media during the show, so we'll be able to kind of bring you some of that as well. So, appreciate it all. Glad to be back in the saddle, and we'll be back here tomorrow. And if you missed any of the shows, sports1280.com, NOLA.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube page. So, Jeff? Good show.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Fun to be back.
Yep, and we will be back
Go
here
buy a chicken and sacrifice
tomorrow. Uh-oh, Dave. Settle down over there on a Torture Tuesday. It's Wobble Wobble Wednesday tomorrow. Settle Jeff more of Jeff's speed. So come on back tomorrow. Dunc and Holder. See ya.
This is Dr. Ned Hallowell for
You the man,
ADHD
dude.
Awareness Month.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
Having ADHD,
All right, see you tomorrow.
something is wrong with them, when in fact, if managed properly, it can be